Today, we're going to show what different body fat percentages actually look like and what diet and exercise typically accompany each level. Let's start all the way at the top. The highest body fat percentage ever recorded, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, was 80%. At that level, fat covers nearly every muscle and bone in the body. Movement is extremely limited. Breathing, sleeping, and even sitting upright become difficult. This isn't a lifestyle category, it is a medical outlier, usually involving severe illness and fluid retention. So instead of staying here, let's move on quickly to levels that people actually reach. At 50% body fat, both men and women are classified as morbidly obese. Fat visibly hangs over the abdomen, hips, chest, and thighs, obscuring muscle definition entirely. At this level, everyday movement is exhausting. Walking, climbing stairs, and sleeping comfortably are pretty difficult. Diets here are typically very high in calories, dominated by ultra-processed foods with little to no structured exercise. So while women are classified as severely obese at over 45% body fat, men are severely obese at over 40% body fat. So at 50%, men are way over the healthy line. One man at the 50% range described his experience in carrying the excess weight around. "I'm always tired. I'm just always fatigued." But this is still only the beginning of the scale. Do things improve at the 40% range? A little, especially for women. Men are still classified as morbidly obese, while women have shifted down to just obese. Women have hips that are noticeably wider than their shoulders at this body fat percentage, but they're probably not experiencing as many challenges when it comes to simple movements like going upstairs, sleeping, bending over, or general fatigue. At that body fat percentage, men still have a noticeable amount of extra fat, mostly around the stomach area, as well as some in the upper body as well. Women with 40% body fat can look all sorts of different ways and have different diet and exercise habits. On some women, the fat is distributed more evenly, resulting in a woman that may look big but not necessarily unhealthy, while others, particularly those who aren't as mobile and don't work out, may still have lots of noticeable extra fat on the upper arms, stomach, hips, and thighs. Men with this body fat percentage have a significantly higher risk of heart disease, high blood pressure, stroke, diabetes, and other obesity-related issues. Women also have an elevated risk as well, but it is slightly reduced. The bad news is, if you're in the US at least, the average American woman sits at around 39% body fat, and that falls into the obese category. For many people watching, this is the range that they're closest to right now. When we get down to 30% body fat, things change a lot for men as well. At this percentage, a man's lean mass can seriously affect their health and appearance. In one test, two men had the same body fat percentage, about 33%, but looked very different. One had 97 pounds of lean mass, the other had closer to 150 pounds. Even with the same body fat percentage, the second man looked far more in shape and was a regular at the gym. Men with more lean body mass should have pretty normal energy levels, gym performance, and look more toned overall at 30%, even though they do still face some health risks. In the US, about 40% of men are in this range. This is the point where body fat stops being purely visual and starts affecting long-term health. At around 30% body fat, this is where age starts to visibly change what the same percentage looks like. As both men and women get older, their ability to build muscle and metabolize food fast suffers. Their muscle mass and their bone density also generally deteriorates, so their body fat percentage naturally will go up. But it's not just okay to increase body fat reserves as you get older, it's actually recommended. Body fat offers your body and health protection. It acts as an energy reserve during illnesses and periods of weakness or low appetite, both things that affect people more often as they age. Carrying some extra body fat gives your body energy reserves it can use during physically difficult times, helping support your immune system and fight off disease. If you are older and lean, your body has less fat to draw from. That means healing and recovery can take longer. In extreme cases, your body might start breaking down necessary tissue, like muscle, for energy. This matters when you look at what's considered normal. The average US male sits at around 27% body fat. For men aged 20 to 49, that is classified as obese. But once you pass 50, that exact same percentage suddenly falls into an acceptable range. For women, the contrast is even sharper. At 30% body fat, women are considered to be in the optimal range, toward the higher end but still completely healthy. Even in the youngest adult group, ages 20 to 29, women aren't classified as obese unless they're above 32% body fat. This is why you'll see plenty of women in the gym who look fit, eat balanced diets, and don't aggressively restrict food, and would still land near 30% body fat. In fact, in the US, only about 10% of women are leaner than that. That said, a woman could be at 30% body fat while barely exercising and living on takeout. And this is where individual differences really start to matter. One quick note before we go lower. This explains why two people at the same body fat percentage can look very different and face very different health risks. Body fat distribution varies by genetics and ethnicity, which is why people at the same body fat percentage or BMI can look very different and face very different health risks. This is one reason that BMI alone isn't a reliable measure of health. With that in mind, let's keep moving down the scale. 20% body fat. What does that look like in men? Some men have defined muscles, especially around their arms and shoulders, and a noticeably toned physique. Others might have a body closer to what people call skinny fat, an overall thin frame with a belly and extra fat around places like the upper chest and arms. Only 12% of men are at or under this body fat percentage. For some men, this is the range where they feel the healthiest, happiest, and most energetic, and that can be influenced by past physical condition, but genetics plays the largest role. People's genes generally create a set range at which their body will feel, look, and perform at its best. This can vary by a few percentage points from one person to the next. That's also why people can look very different at the exact same body fat percentage. One study of different ethnic groups by the International Journal of Obesity found that groups of people at the same age, gender, and body fat percentage can have very different BMIs. When matched for body fat, age, and sex, Black Americans had BMIs about 1.3 points lower than Caucasians, while Polynesians were lower by roughly 4.5 points. In other words, two people with the same BMI can have very different body fat levels, especially Polynesians, who tend to carry significantly more fat at the same BMI. Chinese, Ethiopian, Indonesian, and Thai groups were also studied, and they all had lower BMIs than the Caucasian group by roughly 2 to 5 points. This points to genetic differences in body build and energy usage. That's why BMI isn't always the best indicator of overall health. It doesn't take into account muscle mass or genetic differences, and research eventually figured out why. South Asian populations tend to have smaller frames and store a greater share of their body fat deep around their organs rather than just under the skin. All of this highlights how strongly genetics shapes where fat is stored and how much of it we carry and how that fat translates into health risks over time. And the lower you go on the scale, the more those differences matter. At 20%, we're already in a really small group when it comes to women, because women look pretty fit at this level of body fat. Most will have somewhat defined abs and noticeable muscles. In fact, most female athletes sit around 20% body fat, except gymnasts who tend to have way lower levels, as you'll soon see. And that may not be a great thing. 20% body fat is so rare that only 2% of US women even have a body fat percentage under 25%. Even though it's quite lean, it's still a percentage that women can maintain while staying healthy, happy, and most importantly, not dieting in overly strict ways, as long as they're exercising consistently and mostly following a healthy meal plan. So 20% on women is lean, but still in a healthy range. That's not the case when we start to dip below that range. At 15%, women start to enter potentially dangerous territory. Here, the body starts actively resisting further fat loss. While their muscles will look very defined, it's generally recommended women don't stay in this range for too long. Usually 15% is a result of professional athletes training for a specific event. Of course, it also depends on the type of athlete. A study by Human Kinetics in Canada found that female basketball players have body fat ranges of 20 to 27% on average. Tennis players sit at 16 to 24%, and swimmers at 14 to 24%. On the other hand, gymnasts generally have body fat levels of 10 to 16%, and marathon runners have 10 to 15%, which might not be great news. If women stay in this range for a while, they can temporarily lose their menstrual cycle and see a decrease in their overall energy levels. After a while, their bone mineral density will fall, and their gut health will also be negatively affected. Hunger levels definitely go up as your body fights to get body fat back on, so maintaining this percentage will also feel like a huge chore. Since women's essential body fat lies between 10 and 12%, 15% can get dangerously close to that for most. Quite a few men, on the other hand, can get to this body fat percentage with regular gym sessions that include weightlifting and generally watching their diet, mostly cutting out lots of sugars, fats, and processed and junk food. How easy it is to maintain depends largely on genetics and where someone is starting from. Dropping to 15% body fat from a very high weight is far harder than coming down from a more average range. Men who are naturally lean and build muscle easily will have a much easier time staying there. Of course, you don't have to be a gym rat to be at 15%. You could just be a pretty thin 20-year-old guy. If you don't really work out, you'll know that you're at 15% if you have a flat stomach and some faint muscle definition. When it comes to American men, only 2% of them fall at or below this body fat level, and even fewer men fall at or below the next body fat percentage, 12%. After this point, almost no one stays here accidentally. Even if men can reach that body fat range, maintaining it is much harder. That kind of body composition usually means strict, repetitive meal prep. The infamous chicken, rice, and broccoli, inexplicably cooked without seasoning. Not everything has to be self-punishment, guys. Maintaining this weight takes a lot of discipline, almost no deviation from a very consistent, challenging workout schedule, and a strict meal plan. The difference between 12 and 15% for those men is that at the former level, you can start to see some ab definition. Not because you've been killing it at the gym, but because you literally don't have enough fat to cover your ab muscles. As for women, 12% body fat is squarely in bodybuilding territory, and that's being generous. For many women, reaching that level isn't even possible without drugs. While someone may look extremely muscular at this percentage, energy levels and athletic performance tend to drop off fast. At 12%, body fat is almost entirely about appearance, not function. Outside of bodybuilding, you mainly see numbers this low in intensive gymnastics or similar sports, and even there, it often comes with missed periods and other negative health effects. Not to mention the hunger pangs. A huge chunk of your day will just be you fantasizing about food. And that's because women with this amount of body fat are barely staying above their essential fat levels. Speaking of, let's go a bit lower. 10%. Men who work out look jacked here. They have clearly defined six-packs, they have muscle striations all over the place. But at this point, even men really can't step out of line at all when it comes to your meal and fitness routine. With the exception of a rare few men who thrive at that level because they have the genetics of a pro athlete. The probability of that being you is slim. And if you're at 10% as just a very thin man, you might want to look at putting on some weight. You will probably have very visible abs and muscles, but you also will look much thinner than the gym bro, mostly because you haven't built up your lean muscle mass. For women, 10% is the minimum amount of body fat percentage that is biologically possible. At that point, you're down to the lowest point of your essential fat. It is really not recommended to go below that, or even get there, honestly. Women who are actively bodybuilding in preparation for a competition might get down to this body fat percentage for a bit. They'll likely stop menstruating and face more extreme health risks. Many report losing their hair. Their brain is also basically a slideshow of Ben & Jerry's flavors at this point, as their body begs them to take in any fat at all. At this point, the body is no longer cooperating, it is surviving. At around 8% body fat, men can start to lose their sex drive, struggle with sleep, and even have trouble thinking clearly. Why? Because the body interprets this as starvation and puts everything else on hold until the food shows up. Your brain will be fixated on finding a nice fatty meal 24 hours a day. Everything else is brain fog. Energy levels are also down because food intake is being severely restricted, both in terms of calories and also to the blandest meals available. At this point, you're ready to hand over your savings account for a happy meal. The reason men lose their sex drive at lower body fat percentages is similar to the reason why women lose their periods. Their bodies have made an executive decision that there is clearly no time to have a kid, as you can't even get enough food to keep yourself alive. So your body focuses all your thoughts, internal processes, and energy on getting food for you first, putting everything else on the back burner. Women at 8% don't really exist, and if they do, it is so incredibly unhealthy that it's basically life-threatening. The last level we'll look at for men is one that also is borderline dangerous, especially if kept for a long time. 5%. 5% body fat is incredibly hard to achieve. Many men who have gotten down to this level needed steroids or other performance-enhancing drugs to get anywhere near it. As men's body fat percentage starts to dip below 8%, their body really panic shifts into survival mode. It starts to burn off everything it can, including muscle, to stay alive and well, because your body doesn't understand why you just wouldn't eat. Now that we've gone through all the different possibilities, what body fat percentage range should people generally aim for? The American College of Sports Medicine says the best body fat percentage range for women is 20 to 32%. For men, that range is 10 to 22%. For most people, staying in that range is already doing better than average. Now go check out fast food industry secrets, what they don't want you to know, or click on this video instead.